Welcome to the first podcast of Association of Insolvency Professional Entities (AIPE). This is an initiative of AIPE to deliberate into the key happenings in the world of insolvency. I am Alka Kapoor, CEO of AIPE, having a professional experience of over 35 years, and I have the privilege of having with me the board member of AIPE, Mr. Vipin Agarwal, who's an astute professional with the professional experience of over 35 years again, and also having a business leadership exposure and experience. Sir, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
To this podcast.
Thank you.
And we'll be very happy to hear your views on the various aspects of insolvency which are happening today. Mediation mechanism is being proposed by IBBI to resolve the problem of excessive burden on NCLTs because the number of applications which are being filed by the OCs are on the increase, thereby heavily increasing the burden of NCLTs. To discuss this very important aspect of mediation, whether that is the correct measure as far as the OCs are concerned, we would like to have your views, Mr. Vipin, on this. What do you feel? Whether this mediation mechanism is the right mechanism to handle this aspect of the increasing burden of NCLTs?
Thank you. I am also as curious as you are to ask me this question because there are three things. One is that IBC as a mechanism very clearly says that operational creditors can file a case of recovery for insolvency when there are no disputes and the claim is absolutely indisputable between the debtor and the creditor. Having said this, if you propose a mediation and that too to reduce the burden of NCLT, it presupposes a dispute between the two parties. So if mediation presupposes, this is my understanding, that there is a dispute between the two parties, and if IBC does not acknowledge any claim which is having a dispute, then this appears to be slightly a case of dichotomy between what IBC states and what the proposed discussion paper says. And I have tried to decipher this from some newspaper reports and also some seminars. I haven't really found the answer which I have been looking for myself, that how does one address this dichotomy of mediation proposed, which is supposed to ease the burden of NCLT, vis-a-vis the IBC framework, which per se rules out any case of admission when there is a dispute between the two parties. So let us have more clarity on.
So what you're saying is that mediation finds no place in insolvency.
To my mind, no, and particularly with the alibi that NCLT is a robot burden and therefore you should come out with a roundabout fashion. I would say there are a lot of possibilities even to ease the burden of NCLT in the day-to-day course of things by reviewing the systems and processes, and maybe one can look at that, revisit them, and then make it much more autonomous, spontaneous, at least the case of admission is concerned. So if NCLT is a constraint, then that can be very well addressed by simplifying the entry of IBC admission from the door of insolvency, from the door of NCLT itself.
No, then the question comes: who will ensure that the applications which are being filed before NCLT are the correct ones?
So
how do you see the role of professionals?
So one is the law was written, and the law was written prior to that. There were number of countries which had been having this law, and therefore this became a guiding factor. And they all have a judiciary which blesses the insolvency admission. Now in our country, if we go by the experience of 6 years now or 7 years now, there is a general hue and cry that IBC timelines, they have not really been adhered to. So if the period of 180 days, if we take, there is hardly any percentage of cases which have truly been resolved within the discipline of timelines as per IBC. And the reason for that is the judiciary has not even acknowledged the case in 180 days. So if they have not even admitted the case after making an application for 180 days, then the very question which really arises is, what is the real value addition from NCLT while admitting a case? So if you have a creditor and if you have a resolution professional, there can be a lot of delegation and there can be a lot of autonomous provisioning which can happen, whereby this particular work of NCLT can be delegated to the resolution professional, who is also a functionary of NCLT, by the way. And therefore NCLT work can remain more to address the grievances and to also address the resolution plans, which are to be approved. So this can be debottlenecked to my mind, and if we can really pursue that, then this very reason for easing out the burden of NCLT goes away. And there can be many more alternatives apart from this particular alternative which I am proposing.
Absolutely right, sir. Because it is also felt by some, not by everybody, that this mediation mechanism may in turn be another bottleneck, as you were saying, and then increase the timeline further.
Yeah, because mediation mechanism even now exists. It is not something which is new.
Yes.
Now, looping mechanism of mediation in IBC is something which is slightly more roundabout fashion of making IBC a little more complicated than it is needed to be. So it is a good law, it is a simple law, let it remain more efficient, let it become more efficient.
With that, I would like to ask you, Mr. Vipin, a very basic question, because we've seen in news items, there have been news that IBC is not a recovery mechanism. What, according to you, what are your views on whether IBC is or is not a recovery mechanism? Because that forms the basis fundamental of IBC.
Very interesting. There have been some headlines in some leading newspapers which are really quoting some remarks of NCLT judges, which have said that this IBC is not a recovery platform. And if you really look at the parliamentary debate on IBC, whether it has been a successful law or not, then they all quote the recoveries which have happened through IBC. So IBC talks about resolution and resolution of bad debt, and if bad debt is recovered, it is actually a recovery. I don't know. This has to be read in some context, that this particular news item has come which has confused that IBC is not a recovery platform. The design of IBC is recovery and resolution, and therefore it is essentially a resolution or a recovery platform which are interchangeably used. Now, going to the specific of this news item, there is apparently a case between some Tricolite and Wipro Limited, where the company paid 97% the amount and then the remaining 3% was a disputed item, for which the judge very rightly held that disputes are not within the purview for operational creditors under IPC, and therefore Wipro, being a solvent company and a blue chip company, you cannot actually make or declare it to be an insolvent company, and therefore the case was dismissed. So if you go on to the particular facts and details of the case, then there is no ambiguity with respect to the judgment or the case or the provisions of IBC. However, the same particular tagline was apparently used in another case where the company was not solvent and there was no dispute between the operational creditor and the debtor also. Now there, it goes slightly out of context, because possibly, I have no details to say this, but I am only saying there is a possibility that the arguing lawyer might have used this particular quipping from the previous judgment, and the judge possibly, got slightly carried away, and therefore he also pronounced the same, that IBC is not a recovery platform. IBC is very much a recovery platform. The word which has been used in the law is resolution, and resolution of a defaulting debt is nothing but a recovery. So I think our media reporting is not to be read by the headlines, but has to be read with the details of the specifics. And therefore, I would only urge the readers and the fraternity professionals to not get misled that IBC there is a change in the basic tenets. It remains what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree. So it's actually resolution, but yes, there is recovery later on through the resolution. True. So other than this, there are various issues which are coming up every day since 2016 when the IBC was formed, and the law is continuously evolving. Do you have? We would like to hear you on having some other radical views like this, as far as IBC is
The only thing
concerned.
which I always feel is this is one of the brilliant piece of law which we have had the benefit in the commercial world.
Yeah.
The first thing is in our country we don't have specialized courts. So like in other country you have commercial courts which are separate from some other courts and they only specialize in the business matters. We don't have such kind of a thing. The second thing is maybe IBC is where the beginning should be made, where we should have specialized business courts. But until that happens, I personally feel that there is a lot of room for autonomy to be given, at least in the first stages of admission, and the NCLT's work can be drastically reduced to only look at the resolution, grievance, appellate mechanism, and if there are some roundabout things, where you definitely need to create a mechanism for grievance redressal or even punish the guilty. So that is where they should confine their scope, which requires a strict scope of I would say civil and judicial trial.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your views.
Thank you so much.
We will take up, there are so many other issues which we will take up in the subsequent podcasts.
Thank you.
Thank you.